Everyone, it's Shannon here. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, we are going to create this fun rainbow card with the new Sprigs Die and the Oversized Hello stamp and die set. We're going to start our project with the Sprigs die set. This die set, you get 11 dies. You can see them all here. They're all beautiful, like leaves and some flowers. I'm going to use the bottom 8. I'm not going to use the top 3. I wanted the sprigs to be a little bit longer, so I picked out the longer ones. I'm just going to take all of these 8 dies, place them on some white cardstock, and die cut them out. I went ahead and die cut 3 sets out of each one of those 8 dies. You might want to keep the remains, the negatives, because those could be fun for card fronts as well. I'm going to start by ink blending on these die cuts. You could use whatever inks you have at home, but I'm going to use Waffle Flower inks today. I really like how the collection plays with each other. I just think it's a really pretty palette. I'm going to create a soft gradation. I'm going to have the bottom of the leaf or the flower a little bit darker and just kind of create this gradation to a lighter color at the tip of the leaves. I think this just will add a little bit more dimension, and I think it's just a really pretty look. It's a nice way to get a little different look than if you were to die cut these sprigs out of colored cardstock, which you could definitely do too if you wanted to just skip the ink blending step here, but I thought it would be fun to have a little gradation on these sprigs. So I'm just working my way through my rainbow of colors. I picked out a lot of waffle flower colors: a red, a pink, an orange, a yellow, a green, a kind of blue-green or an aqua kind of color, and then a green, and of course a blue and a purple. Really just a whole rainbow of colors. I actually picked out 9 colors in total, and I am ink blending at least 2, sometimes 3 of these sprigs in these colors. I'm just kind of picking them out, kind of keeping it random. I'm not trying to ink blend 2 of the same type of sprigs in the same color. I just want to give myself lots of options. I will not be using all 24 of these sprigs, but it is nice to just have some options so I can play around with the arrangement and really get something that I like in it and really make sure I fill out my frame. So now I'm working on my aqua here. This is New Fish and Pond. I just finished with one of my most favorite colors, which is that kind of dark sagey blue-green color. That one is called Peace of Mind. I love it. Here I'm on my Daydreaming, and then after that I'll finish up with my purple, my very last color. I am working on top of a palette paper. This Waffle Flower makes a pad of palette paper that you can use with your mat. It fits perfectly inside of the bed of your mat, and the nice thing about the palette paper is it protects your work surface, but it is like a plastic paper, so you can clean it. So I'm just using my damp chamois and cleaning it, and I can use that piece of palette paper again. I'm now going to create my square frame. I have the Additional Squares die set here. This is new, that just came out in Waffle Flower's March release. I pulled off 2 square dies, and I'm going to nest one inside of the other, trying to get an even gap between the 2. Once I have the gap even, I'll then grab a couple pieces of purple tape, place them on top, and then run it through my die cutting machine. This Additional Squares die set works really well with the Nesting Squares die set. If you have both of those die sets, you can make any square within 1/16 of an inch difference. So really lots of possibilities with those 2 square die sets. Now I have a square card base here. It is 5.5 by 5.5, and I'm using it as a reference to help me kind of arrange my sprigs. I also have the larger square die that I used to create the frame, just placed it temporarily down onto my card front, and I'm starting to arrange my sprigs in rainbow order, trying to keep a nice even gap between them as I work my way around this square. And again, I won't use all 24 of these sprigs. I'll complete one side of my rainbow here, which I just completed, and now I'm starting over again with that pink sprig right there. So now I'll repeat the process on the other half of my square, and now my kind of rainbow square wreath of sprigs is done. I've placed down my top die cut white frame, and now I'm grabbing pieces of painter's tape, and I'm placing them on top of the sprigs in the frame to kind of hold everything in place. I did make sure to kind of take the painter's tape and stick it to my clothing to remove some of the stick. If you don't want to use painter's tape, you can definitely use a press and seal sheet. Those work well. I do actually just prefer the painter's tape because I can reuse the painter's tape over and over and over again. So once I had all the sprigs stuck down, I then flipped over my frame and sprigs, And now I'm going to sandwich these sprigs in place. I die cut 3 more frames using the same 2 squares dies that I did earlier, and then I put glue all over the top of one of those frames, placed it directly down onto the sprigs, and tried to align it, match it up with the alignment of the top frame that's on top of the sprigs. And that's going to sandwich all those sprigs in place. The remaining 2 square frames, I'm going to just adhere one on top of the other, and this is just to create some added dimension. So when I place my sprigs and frames down onto my card front, they're a little bit lifted away from the card front, just have a really pretty shadow. I really like that look. So I'm now have everything arranged. I added some glue to the very last frame, and now I'm ready to stick this kind of a sprig frame down onto my card front. So I just stuck that down, and now that it's stuck down, I'm going to carefully remove the painter's tape here. You definitely want to go slow just so you don't accidentally rip any of the sprigs, because they are very delicate little pieces of paper. And once I have all of my painter's tape off, I am actually done with my frame and sprigs, so it's pretty cool. Worked out really well. I'm going to grab my scissors though and just trim a couple of the sprigs. They just are sticking out a little bit too much. And now I'm going to move on to my sentiment. I have the Oversized Hello word die. I went ahead and die cut it out of white cardstock and white craft foam. This is going to add some dimension to our sentiment. I like to leave the craft foam sentiment inside its negative, and then I just added some adhesive to the cardstock hello and then adhered it directly down to the craft foam. Once it's dried, I can then easily remove the negative, and they're lined up perfectly. So it's really helpful to get really good alignment when you leave your craft foam in the negative before you adhere the cardstock on top. Now I'm going to stamp a sentiment strip. I just used the Oversized Hello stamp set, pulled a sentiment from that, going to stamp it on some gray cardstock. I am going to do some heat embossing, so I used some anti-static powder, inked it up in Versamark, put on some white embossing powder, and then heat set that. Now I'm going to finish up this card by adhering my sentiments. I'm going to start with the Oversized Hello. Because of the dimension of the frame, I do need to add some additional foam to the center of the hello just to compensate for the dimension of the frame. So I just added some tiny foam squares to the back side of the hello and then stuck that down. To make sure it's really stuck down to the frame as well, I've grabbed my liquid glue here. I'm just going to lift up little edges and corners of my sentiment just to make sure that I can glue it down onto the paper frame as well. Now for my sentiment strip, I doubled up my foam tape here. So the 2 little corners that you can see that have foam tape, it's 2 pieces of foam tape, one stacked on top of the other. And I did leave the center open because you can see I wanted to overlap that hello a little bit. And once I stuck that sentiment strip down, my card is finished. And I'll hold the finished card up to the camera so you can get a good look. Look at all that dimension we have. Lots of pretty shadows because of it, thanks to all of our stacking of cardstock and craft foam. And I just love that beautiful rainbow palette. Just really fun to ink up those sprigs and play around with color. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. I'll also share links to my blog and my Instagram account. And if you like this video, I'd so love for you to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.